It was just after 4 a.m. when my phone buzzed in the locker room, low and long, like a rattlesnake warning me not to pick it up. I just finished a 12-hour shift, wiped clean 3 code blues, and reset 2 dislocated shoulders. My hands still smelled like latex and antiseptic. All I wanted was a strong coffee, a hot shower, and the quiet ride home through cornfields still wrapped in fog. But that buzz, it wasn't a message I could ignore. Unknown number, check her texts. Start with last Thursday. No name. No context. Just that. I stared at the screen, blinking hard. My wife, Melissa, had been off at a board retreat last Thursday. Some lakeside cabin thing with other nonprofit folks from town. She said there'd be no signal. No calls. No texts. Just team building and nature hikes and come by it crap. I'd believed her. Until that message. I got home just before dawn. Our 2-story farmhouse sat alone on the edge of a soybean field, all orange light and dew-slick grass. Melissa's SUV was already in the driveway. She'd gotten back late the night before, she said. Too tired to talk. Already asleep when I got home. I stood in the kitchen, still in my scrubs, staring at her phone charging by the coffee maker. Unlocked. Right there. Like a trap set with meat. My hands didn't shake when I picked it up. Not yet. Inbox. Scroll. Search. You're all I think about. Can't stop picturing you in that dress. Last weekend was perfect. I miss your skin. The sender? Brandon. Brandon fucking Miles. Melissa's best friend's husband. We did dinner with him and Laura just last week. He toasted our 25th anniversary with bourbon and a smirk. He called me brother. I had no idea I was shaking his damn hand while he was screwing my wife behind my back. I sat down hard at the kitchen table, Melissa still snoring down the hall, and just stared at the phone. Everything clicked at once. That weird tan line I noticed in January. The sudden girls' trips. The new perfume she said was a free sample. That stupid flirty laugh she used to reserve just for me. She'd been cheating for months. Maybe longer. And the worst part? She wasn't even careful. I didn't confront her. Not then. I couldn't. Instead, I set the phone down like it was poison and poured myself a cup of coffee with hands that suddenly couldn't stay still. I needed to think. I needed a plan. Rage would be easy, but revenge? That needed patience. 3 days later, I found myself fixing a fence post on the west side of the property when a familiar truck pulled into our driveway. It was Laura Miles, Brandon's wife. She climbed out slow, tight-lipped, sunglasses on, even though the sky was overcast. She walked up to me without a word and handed me a manila envelope, sealed with red tape. I thought you should know, she said. Her voice was flat, dead, like someone who'd already cried every tear they had. I opened the envelope after she left. Inside were printouts of texts, photos, a hotel receipt, a snapshot of Melissa's hand on Brandon's thigh, the same hand that used to squeeze mine when we sat in church. I stared at the photos for a long time. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I smiled, because now I knew I wasn't alone, and I wasn't going to waste a single drop of anger, not when I could turn it into something better. Justice. I kept it quiet, didn't slam doors, didn't throw accusations, didn't whisper a damn thing. Instead, I fixed the screen door that had been hanging crooked for a month. I watered Melissa's tomatoes like I always did. I asked her about her day, her fundraisers, her committee meetings, and listened like the perfect, oblivious husband. But every word she spoke now sounded like static, lies wrapped in lipstick. I started documenting everything. Every meeting she claimed to attend. Every late return from donor dinners. Every detail logged with date, time, and excuse. At the hospital, I downloaded an encrypted voice recorder app on my phone, one we used for trauma reports. I clipped it to the underside of the kitchen table, another under the dashboard of her SUV when I offered to get her oil changed. She didn't notice. She never did. That was the thing about cheaters. They thought everyone around them was dumber than they were. The first break came the following Friday. Melissa had said she was volunteering at the elementary school's charity auction. Asked if I wanted to swing by after my shift. I told her I'd be dead asleep. Night shifts, after all. But I didn't sleep. Instead, I followed her. I swapped cars with my buddy Roy, beat-up Toyota pickup with mud-stained windows and a busted rear light. Perfect cover. I watched her SUV pull out of our driveway right on time. Followed at a distance. Through town, past the school, straight to a gravel road I knew too well. The old Miller farm, now abandoned, used sometimes by teenagers looking for trouble and folks looking to hide. And there it was. Brandon's black Dodge Ram. parked behind a crumbling silo, half concealed by corn. I stayed far enough back to watch, but close enough to see her laugh as she climbed into his truck. Watched the way she touched his chest, kissed his cheek, disappeared inside with him. My stomach flipped, but I didn't cry. Not anymore. Instead, I raised my phone and snapped photos. 1, 2, 3. The timestamp burned into every frame. Back home, I printed everything and added it to the growing stack hidden under a loose floorboard in the garage. Texts, photos, audio clips, GPS logs. I was building a case. Not for the police, not for divorce court, but for the reckoning they didn't see coming. Melissa was back by 10 p.m. that night, cheeks flushed, hair freshly brushed, humming some pop songs she hadn't listened to in years. Everything go well? I asked, flipping through a Tractor Supply catalog at the kitchen table. Yeah, she said, kissing my cheek. We raised over $2,000. I smiled. Proud of you. She smiled back, completely unaware that I'd already recorded her lie. The next morning, Laura called again. She was calm. Too calm. I want to meet, she said. Face to face. We met at a diner on Route 6. Neutral territory. Old booths, burnt coffee. No one we knew. She was already there when I arrived, dressed like she was headed to church, but with eyes that hadn't slept. I've got more, she said, pushing a folder across the table. I've been watching too. Inside were more photos. One of them at a motel 2 towns over. Room 206. Melissa in that same blue blouse she always wore to work events. Her blouse half open. Brandon grinning like a fool. I installed a tracker on his phone, she said. Got the whole location history. You want access? I nodded slowly. Yeah, I want it all. That night, I lay beside Melissa in our bed, her back to me, her breathing soft. The same woman I held through childbirth. The woman I nursed through a breast cancer scare. The one who used to laugh until she cried watching reruns of Cheers on the couch with me. And now? Now she was a stranger. And I was her shadow. On Sunday, the final piece clicked into place. Melissa forgot to log out of her email on the iPad. Not her main account, the fake one. The private one. The one tied to an address I'd never seen before. Probably used for fundraising purposes. I took screenshots of everything. Hotel confirmations. Flirty exchanges. Even a Google Doc they shared with a list of cover stories in case either of us asked questions. She actually planned alibis. Like it was some sort of covert op. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a fling. It was a whole second life. By the time the sun set that night, I had everything. Proof. Witnesses. A co-conspirator in Laura. And a plan. But I wasn't going to be the one to light the match. No. That was Laura's choice. She had the stage. I just built the bonfire. It started with coffee. Not some dramatic pact under storm clouds or whispered oaths in back alleys. Just 2 people sitting in the corner booth of the feed mill cafe, sharing a pot of coffee so bitter it could peel paint. Laura stirred hers 3 times before taking a sip. So, she said, eyes locked on mine. What now? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pulled out a battered manila folder and dropped it on the table. Her hand rested on top of it for a beat before she opened it. Photos. Printouts. Voice transcripts. GPS logs. A full dossier on her husband and my wife, more organized than any detective's file. I don't want to yell. I don't want to scream. And I sure as hell don't want to give them the satisfaction of a messy breakdown, I said. But I want them exposed. For everyone to see. Laura looked at me, silent. Then she nodded once. We'll do it my way, she said. And when it hits, it'll burn. Melissa had no idea. She hummed around the house like she always did. Baked muffins she hadn't made in years. Started asking about weekend getaways, just the 2 of us. It was like some part of her suspected something, and she was testing the old strings to see if they still held. They didn't. But I let her play her tune. Laura and I kept things clean. No texts. No emails. No digital trail. Instead, we passed flash drives back and forth hidden inside library books. She'd borrow a romance novel. I'd return it with a thriller. Inside, data moved, pictures, documents, schedules. Quiet weapons. One night, she handed me a copy of Brandon's full itinerary. Guess who's taking another business trip this weekend? She said, half smirking. Melissa's not even trying to be subtle anymore. I flipped through the printed schedule. Hotel in the city. Friday through Sunday. Room booked for 2. They're getting sloppy, I said. Or cocky. She paused. Then added, you ever think about confronting her? All the time, I admitted. But that's what she'd expect. That's how she'd win. She'd spin it. Cry. Blame the long shifts. Say it just happened. You know the speech. Laura's voice hardened. She's been rehearsing it for months. Friday came. Melissa left after lunch, kissing me goodbye like she meant it. Hair curled. Suitcase in hand. She claimed it was a donor dinner and a full-day board meeting. Same story she used last time. I waved from the porch. Watched her SUV pull onto the main road. Then I called Laura. Time for another field trip. We parked outside the hotel by 5 p.m. Same spot as last time. Laura's camera zoomed in from the passenger seat, the long lens tucked beneath a blanket. We didn't say much. Just watched. At 5:36, Melissa arrived. Red dress. Hair pinned up. Laughing too hard as she got out of Brandon's truck. He opened the lobby door for her like some twisted gentleman. They vanished inside. Laura clicked photo after photo, her face like stone. You okay? I asked. No, she said. But I will be. The next morning, I stopped by the farmer's market. Just another face in a crowd of neighbors. Small towns love gossip, but they love evidence more. I handed a fresh produce box to Jeanette, the town's nosiest volunteer, slipped a flash drive underneath the beets, and said, You didn't get this from me. 10 minutes later, I saw her talking to Denise, the hairdresser. Denise's eyes went wide. By noon, the fuse was lit. Back at home, I took my time. Mowed the lawn, trimmed the hedges, made lasagna from scratch, set the table for two. Melissa walked in at 6:40 p.m. sharp, smelling like hotel soap and lies. Hey, babe, she said, kissing my cheek. Miss me? Always, I lied. She smiled like she'd pulled off the perfect con. I almost laughed. At church on Sunday, the whispers started. Melissa wore her favorite floral dress and that phony board member smile. But I could see it, the flickers of confusion in her eyes. People weren't hugging her as long. Her friends didn't ask about the conference. And when Brandon walked in with Laura trailing behind him, Melissa's whole body tensed. Laura didn't sit beside her husband. She took a seat 2 pews back and kept her eyes locked on Melissa the whole service. That night, Melissa asked if something was wrong. I looked up from my paper and smiled. Everything's just fine. She frowned, like she was testing me. You sure? You've been distant. I set the paper down. We all have secrets, honey. Some just take longer to surface. She froze, just for a second, then gave me that same sweet, practiced grin. Well, I'm glad we don't keep secrets. I nodded slowly. Me too. By the end of that week, the town was buzzing. Photos were leaking. An anonymous email hit every board member in her nonprofit. A package arrived at Brandon's office with a neatly organized timeline of his affair, right down to the hotel receipts. Melissa came home one night pale, shaking, whispering something about a smear campaign. I comforted her like a good husband should. You think someone's targeting you? I asked gently. She nodded. I don't know who. Maybe someone from work. Or, I don't know, but someone's out to ruin me. Why would anyone do that to you? I asked, genuinely curious what her answer would be. She opened her mouth, then closed it, and walked away. The cracks were forming. But the real storm? That was coming. And Laura had the final blow ready. One public event. One room full of donors, family, and neighbors. One speech. Then the curtain would fall. I knew the fire had reached her when I came home and found Melissa sitting on the edge of the couch, still in her work clothes, not even pretending to scroll her phone. The TV was off. Her tea was cold, and her hands were shaking. Something happened? I asked, kicking off my boots by the door. She looked up, startled, like she forgot I lived here too. Nothing, she said too quickly. Just a rough day. Yeah, I said. People talking. That hit the mark. Her eyes darted to mine for a flash before she looked away. Small town, she muttered. You know how it is. I nodded, set my keys on the table, and said nothing. She needed to squirm. At work, my patients noticed. I was calmer, lighter. One of the new nurses even asked if I'd gone on vacation. I just smiled. Something like that. Because while Melissa and Brandon were unraveling, Laura and I were sharpening the blade. The town's fall gala was coming up, a fundraiser for the local library. Same event Melissa had chaired for the last 5 years. She had already ordered the wine, assigned seating, printed banners with her name in cursive. It was her favorite night of the year. Laura picked it for the reveal. I want them all there, she said. The friends, the board, her parents, even the pastor. I want every damn person she's lied to sitting 5 feet away when the curtain drops. I gave her a nod. You sure you want to do it yourself? She looked me dead in the eye. I want to look them in the face when it happens. The week leading up to the gala, things got weirder at home. Melissa started baking. Like, obsessively. Muffins, bread, cookies. She even pulled out her mother's old pie crust recipe, the one she hadn't touched in 10 years. She was spiraling. That Thursday, she sat across from me at dinner and said, "Do you think we've drifted?" I set my fork down, slow and steady. "What do you mean?" She looked down at her plate. I don't know. Maybe we got too comfortable. Maybe I took things for granted." I stared at her. The woman who had built a second life with another man was sitting across from me, pretending she wanted to fix what she shattered. I should have thrown the wine in her face. But I didn't, because the real splash was coming. Friday night came fast. I helped Melissa zip up her dress. It was silver, elegant, showed just enough to earn compliments and hide intentions. Her makeup was flawless. Her perfume stung my throat. "You nervous?" I asked. She smoothed a curl behind her ear. "Always am before a big night." I looked at her in the mirror. "You'll be unforgettable." She smiled at the reflection. If only she knew. At the gala, everything sparkled. The town's elite filled the community center in pressed shirts and cocktail dresses. String lights twinkled above. Tables shimmered with silverware and fake crystal. People laughed, toasted, gossiped. Melissa worked the room like a politician. Hugged everyone. Kissed cheeks. Whispered compliments. But Laura and I saw the looks. Whispers behind napkins. The way women stared too long at her, then leaned into their husbands. They knew. They were just waiting. The evening rolled on. A jazz trio played. Wine flowed. The room grew warm. Then the MC took the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin tonight's auction, we have a very special message from someone near and dear to our community." Laura stepped onto the stage. She looked radiant. Hair curled, voice steady, posture perfect. Melissa froze mid-conversation, wine glass halfway to her lips. "Good evening," Laura began. "For those who don't know me, I'm Laura Miles. I've lived in this town for over 20 years. I've raised my kids here. I've volunteered here. And I've loved this community like it was family." Soft applause. She paused. "And tonight, I need to speak not as a donor or volunteer, but as a wife." The room shifted. A nervous energy swirled. Melissa set her glass down, her face draining of color. Laura continued. "Because for the past year, while I was volunteering, while I was baking casseroles for church and cheering at football games, my husband, Brandon Miles, was having an affair." Gasps. People turned. Some looked at Brandon. Some at Melissa. Most already knew where it was going. And the woman he was cheating with. Laura's voice didn't even crack. Was my best friend. My neighbor. The woman who sat at my kitchen table every Sunday. She turned. Eyes locked on Melissa. Melissa Granger. The room erupted. Whispers like a swarm of bees. Chairs shifting. Hands over mouths. Brandon stood abruptly, like he was going to stop it, but no one cared. Laura stepped back from the mic. "Just thought you all deserved to know who you're donating to." She walked off stage without another word. Melissa didn't speak. She didn't move. She just stood there, surrounded by people pretending not to stare directly at her. Brandon tried to say something. Melissa slapped his arm away. I stayed in my seat, silent, sipping my wine like I was watching a play I'd already seen rehearsed. Back home, Melissa stormed in 20 minutes later, mascara streaked down her cheeks, hair tangled. "Did you know?" she screamed. "Did you know she was going to do that?" I set my jacket on the chair, calm as a monk. "What do you think?" She blinked, took a step back. She whispered. "You were behind this." "No," I said, walking past her to the kitchen. "I just watched it happen, like everyone else." She followed, shaking. "How long have you known?" I turned. "All of it. Every lie. Every hotel. Every kiss. Since the night someone sent me your texts." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "I gave you 25 years, I said. "And you threw it away for some second-rate Romeo with back hair and a boat payment." Tears started. "Tom, no," I said. "Don't." I didn't yell. I didn't need to. Because she knew the war was over. And she'd lost. The next morning, the town woke up with a hangover. Not from alcohol, but from the truth. The gala had ended in chaos. Half the guests left early. A few whispered apologies made their way to Laura and me before the night was over. But Melissa, she didn't get a single hand on her shoulder. Not one voice saying, "It'll be okay." She was radioactive. I got up at 6, made coffee like I always did, and watched from the kitchen window as Melissa stood in the driveway on the phone, sobbing into one hand and smoking a cigarette with the other. She hadn't touched one in years. Now she lit up like it was the only thing keeping her lungs moving. I didn't ask who she was talking to. Didn't need to. She was calling board members, trying to patch the boat after it had already sunk. By Monday, the calls stopped coming in. She lost her volunteer spot at the women's shelter. Then the town council revoked her seat on the festival committee, quietly, respectfully, but firmly. And when I stopped by the feed store, Greg leaned in close and said, "Tom, you didn't deserve that. None of us did." I just nodded. "Appreciate it." He handed me my change and said, "You ever need help fixing things up around the place, just holler." That's when I realized it. They didn't hate me. They pitied me. But more than that, they respected me for not losing my mind over it, for playing the long game, for keeping my dignity. That was more than Melissa could say. At home, she tried to act normal. She made dinner. She folded laundry. She even tried small talk, like none of this had happened. Like we were just some couple going through a cold patch. She didn't understand. The cold patch was permanent. One evening, we sat in silence while the roast chicken cooled on our plates. Finally, she spoke. "I don't want to lose everything." I looked up. "Then you shouldn't have risked everything." "I was lonely, Tom." She said it like it was a defense. Like a marriage of 25 years, raised kids, shared dreams and fights and losses, could be rewritten because she felt lonely. I didn't reply. I just kept eating. "Can we go to counseling?" she asked softly. "I'll do whatever it takes." I set my fork down. "I already did whatever it took, Melissa. You just weren't paying attention." That night, she slept in the guest room. For the first time in weeks, I slept straight through till morning. Laura and I didn't speak much after the gala. She needed space. I did too. But I got a package from her the following week. No note. Just a bottle of good bourbon and a simple flash drive labeled insurance. I slid it into the safe I kept behind the water heater, just in case the cheaters ever forgot their place and tried to rewrite the story. I wasn't going to let them spin the narrative. One morning, Melissa came into the kitchen with puffy eyes and a legal envelope. "I spoke to a lawyer," she said. I didn't look up from my coffee. Good. So did I. She stood there for a moment, like she expected me to cry, or beg, or lash out. But I didn't. I just sipped my coffee and said, "It's over. Let's not pretend otherwise." She sat down across from me, voice trembling. "I never meant to hurt you." "Yeah," I said. "That's the problem. You never meant to do a lot of things." Over the next few days, we divided everything. Furniture, dishes, family albums. Melissa asked to keep the lake cabin her parents left us in the will. I said fine. I hadn't planned on visiting again anyway. She started staying at a motel in town. Rumor had it she and Brandon weren't even speaking anymore. Word travels fast in a farming town. Apparently, Laura threw all his stuff in the yard and changed the locks. Good for her. The papers were filed by the end of the month. Quiet. No fights. No dramatic courtroom scenes. Just signatures and silence. A week later, I stood in the backyard, trimming the dead branches off the old walnut tree, when I heard tires crunch up the gravel. It was my son, Kyle. He got out, still in his sheriff's uniform, and gave me a long look. "You good, Dad?" I wiped my hands on a rag. "Better now than I've been in years." He walked over, kicked at a loose rock, then looked toward the empty driveway. "She messed up," he said. I nodded. "Yeah, but it's done." He paused, then looked me in the eye. "You need anything, you call me. I don't care what time it is." "Appreciate it, son." He hugged me before he left. Tighter than usual. That night, I grilled steak for one, put on an old record, drank bourbon from a chipped mug, and sat on the porch watching lightning bugs come out of the corn like stars drifting too low. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Not waiting for lies. Not waiting for guilt. Just breathing. But peace never lasts long in a town like ours. Because just as the dust started to settle, I got another message. Unknown number. "You think it's over? Look deeper." The message sat on my phone like a bruise I couldn't press. "You think it's over? Look deeper." No sender. No clue. I stared at it for a long time, thinking maybe it was some prank. Maybe someone in town with too much time and not enough tact. Small towns don't forget, and they love to poke at wounds. But something about that phrasing. Look deeper. It didn't say it's not over. It said you missed something. I pulled out the flash drive Laura had given me after the gala, the one marked insurance. I hadn't opened it yet. I figured I didn't need to. We'd already won. But now? I plugged it in. Folders. Dates. GPS coordinates. Audio files. Screenshots of texts I hadn't seen before. Laura had collected more than what she used for the reveal. A lot more. One folder caught my eye. 2019, Lake House trip. I opened it, and that's when the floor dropped out from under me. Photos. Timestamped. July 7th, 2019. Our anniversary weekend. Melissa had told me she was taking a quick girls' getaway with Laura to prep for the fall fundraising calendar. I hadn't thought much of it. Hell, I even packed her cooler and fixed her tire before she left. But now, staring at the screen, I saw the truth. Brandon, shirtless, smiling, standing on our cabin's porch. Melissa was there, too, half-dressed, wrapped in the same throw blanket she used when we used to stargaze together. There were pictures of them on the lake, in the kitchen, in our bed. Our bed. I leaned back in my chair, hands gripping the table edge like I might fall out of the world. This didn't start last year. It didn't start with one mistake. They'd been together for years. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything, every missed sign, every weekend she worked late, every anniversary she had a headache. I thought I'd seen the whole picture. Turns out, I'd only seen what they let me see. I called Laura the next day. She answered with a quiet, "Tom. I saw the Lake House folder," I said. She didn't speak. "You knew it went back further?" "Yes." "How long?" She sighed. First message I intercepted from them was in late 2018. But I didn't find the Lake House photos until a few weeks before the gala. I didn't want to tell you until after. Why? Because if you'd seen that, I was afraid you'd snap. And I needed you calm. I needed us to be strategic. I nodded, even though she couldn't see. "You did the right thing," I said. But it still felt like I'd been punched all over again. That weekend, I drove out to the lake. I hadn't been back since the separation. The cabin looked the same, quiet, peaceful, untouched. But when I stepped inside, I could still smell her perfume. It clung to the walls. I walked room to room, remembering all the weekends we spent here. The kids, the arguments, the makeups, the laughter. It had all been real to me. But to her? Apparently not real enough. In the bedroom, I found a single earring under the dresser. Not Melissa's. Gold. Small. With a tiny sapphire. I held it in my palm, confused. Then it hit me. Laura. This wasn't just Melissa and Brandon sneaking around. This was a full-blown exchange. What if there'd been multiple betrayals? I texted Laura again. "Me, you ever stay at the lake house with Brandon?" She replied almost instantly. "Laura. Never." "Me, you sure?" "Laura. Why would I lie now?" Good question. But something didn't sit right. That earring didn't just fall there by magic. I took the next week off work. Said I needed time to settle legal stuff. Truth was, I needed time to dig. I started retracing Melissa's digital footprints, back through emails, phone logs, financial records. Everything I hadn't looked at before because I was too focused on the affair with Brandon. I made a spreadsheet. And that's when a new pattern showed up. Weekend trips. Out-of-town conferences. Retreats. But not all of them lined up with Brandon's location data. Some of them overlapped with other names. A James. A Travis. Even one labeled simply as MP. I opened an old invoice from a hotel downtown. Guest name, Marissa Page. That wasn't Melissa's name. It wasn't even her maiden name. It was someone else. I felt sick. Because now I wasn't looking at an affair. I was looking at a lifestyle. The betrayal hadn't just been deep. It had been wide. Years. Faces. Lies. All hidden in plain sight while I worked double shifts and bought her flowers. And now? I didn't want just peace. I wanted truth. All of it. The thing about truth is, it's never where you think it'll be. I used to believe betrayal was simple. One person breaks your heart, you deal with it, you move on. Turns out, betrayal is a hydra. You cut off one head, and two more grow in its place. After finding the hotel reservation under Marissa Page, I spent 3 straight nights combing through records, credit card charges, toll booth logs, airline stubs, even old emails she forgot to delete from the shared account. And what I found was a map of a woman I'd never met. Melissa, or Marissa, as she sometimes went by, had been creating false personas for years. Sometimes she was a wellness coach, sometimes a consultant for regional nonprofits, and sometimes no title at all, Just a woman slipping into hotel bars under someone else's name, sipping wine, telling stories I'd never heard. There was even a separate phone bill. She had a second number, a whole other device. I drove into town the next morning and stopped at Mitch's Repair, where I knew a guy who could clone phones without asking questions. I handed him the backup of her burner phone I'd downloaded from the cloud. Took him 2 hours. Cost me $200 and a bottle of moonshine. Worth every penny. When I scrolled through that device's messages, my stomach turned. There were dozens of men. Dozens. Some flings. Some ongoing. Some she'd ghosted mid-conversation. Each saved under fake names. Dave School, Tony IRS, Will Piano. I found one entry labeled simply, "Do not answer." I opened it. And that's where things changed. The messages were threatening. "You can't just disappear. I know who your husband is. If you don't pay me back, I will come to your house." Attached was a photo of Melissa, clearly taken without her knowing. In the driveway. Our driveway. Time-stamped. 9 months ago. I called Laura. She answered on the second ring. "Tom, I found something." The tension in her voice thickened. "Bad. Worse." We met at a secluded rest stop out near Highway 3, one of those places with vending machines that haven't worked in years and picnic tables older than both of us. I showed her the messages, the names, the financial records. "Jesus," she muttered, flipping through the printouts. She was running a full-blown life factory. "I don't think Brandon was the start," I said. "He was just one of the few who stuck around long enough to matter." Laura closed her eyes for a second. "You think he knew about the others? Does it matter?" "Maybe." She hesitated, then added, "Because I think someone else does." Later that week, my work locker had a note slipped into it. No name. Just 5 words, written in neat block print. "You're asking the wrong questions." I brought it home, set it on the counter, and stared at it for a long time. Then the phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Yeah." A deep voice responded. Calm. Controlled. "You should stop digging, Mr. Granger. Some things are better left buried." Click. No chance to trace it. That night, I loaded my shotgun and placed it by the back door. Not because I expected someone, but because I believed someone. I locked every door, checked every window twice. Even the dog, old Rip, barely moved by thunderstorms, wouldn't leave my side. I called Kyle, my son, the deputy, and told him I needed to talk. Face to face. We met at the diner before sunrise. Over greasy eggs and burnt coffee, I laid it all out. The texts, the threats, the burner phone, the cash withdrawals that didn't match any purchases. Kyle listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back and said, "Dad, this isn't just cheating anymore. I know. This is criminal." I nodded. "I think your mother might have been part of something a lot darker than we thought." That afternoon, Kyle sent me a name. Michael Pruitt, 49, suspended contractor license, accused of wire fraud in Illinois, suspected of running blackmail rings using romantic relationships. Alias, MP. Melissa hadn't just been cheating. She'd been connected to con men, thieves, people with records longer than the Mississippi. Maybe she was playing them. Maybe she was being played. Either way, she'd brought danger to our doorstep. I drove to her motel. She answered the door with a towel on her head and circles under her eyes that could pass for bruises. "You need to tell me everything about Michael Pruitt," I said. Her mouth opened. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and whispered, "Oh God. He found you, didn't he?" Melissa sat on the edge of that motel bed like a prisoner awaiting judgment. Her hands trembled as she lit a cigarette. The same brand her father used to smoke when he came home drunk and mean. I hadn't seen her smoke since 2003. "He found you," she said again, more to herself than to me. "Michael Pruitt," I replied. "You lied to me for years, Melissa. But this isn't just about lying anymore. This is about danger. To me. To our kids. I want answers. Now." She didn't fight it. Maybe because she was too tired. Or maybe because she knew the game was over. "I met him at a conference in Des Moines," she began, eyes fixed on the floor. "He said he was a startup investor looking to fund nonprofits. He was charming. Smart. Told me he could help bring in double the donations if I let him guide a few financial decisions." "You believed him?" She nodded. "At first, yeah. Then it got worse." "What do you mean, worse?" I signed some documents. Stuff I didn't fully understand. Tax forms. Banking access. I thought it was temporary, just so he could monitor how we used grant money. He said it was standard. "And you didn't think to ask me?" I was embarrassed, she whispered. I thought if I could make it work, you'd be proud. I scoffed. You mean, while you were screwing Brandon in our cabin? She flinched. Didn't deny it. I found out later Michael was using me, she said. He was laundering money through the nonprofit accounts. I tried to back out, but by then it was too late. He had screenshots, emails, photos. He threatened to send everything to the board and to you. I folded my arms. So what? You stayed in touch with him out of fear. No, she said quietly. That's where I messed up again. She met my eyes. I went along with it for a cut. The silence between us was deafening. Melissa had accepted monthly payouts from Pruitt's offshore accounts. She'd used the money to fund anonymous donations into her own nonprofit to pad her resume. Made her look like a miracle worker. The community had praised her for years. Meanwhile, Michael got clean money. And she got prestige. And eventually, she got stuck. He's dangerous, Tom, she whispered. He doesn't just walk away when people cross him. He makes them disappear. Why now? I asked. Why reach out to me now, after all this time? She took a long drag of her cigarette. Because I think he's coming back. And I think he knows I talked to someone. Back at home, I called Kyle. He came straight over, cruiser still running. We went over every detail. Pruitt's aliases. His financial trail. The shell companies connected to Melissa's organization. Kyle took notes. Called in a favor with an FBI buddy out of Omaha. You need protection, Kyle said, looking at me dead in the eye. This guy's not just some sleazy grifter. He's a predator. If he thinks you're the reason this house of cards is falling. He didn't need to finish the sentence. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept a loaded shotgun by the front door, another pistol in the nightstand, and a third, an old revolver from my dad, in the glove box of the truck, just in case. 2 days later, Melissa disappeared. She left the motel without telling anyone. Didn't return calls. Her car abandoned outside the quick stop with the keys still in the ignition. I was halfway through filing a missing persons report when Kyle got a hit. Security footage. A man in a ball cap, sunglasses, and military jacket escorted her into a black SUV. No plates. No return. Laura called that night. You think it's him? She asked. I don't think, I said. I know. Kyle doubled down. He called in his friend at the bureau. They pulled cell tower pings and confirmed a known associate of Pruitt's had been in town for 72 hours, used a burner phone that pinged once near the motel and again near the lake house. The lake house. We drove out together, Kyle, me, and a second deputy. No sign of Melissa. But the front door was unlocked. Inside, the place looked untouched. Until we reached the bedroom. On the pillow? A single gold earring. The second of the pair I'd found under the dresser. We searched every inch of the cabin. No blood. No struggle. But there was a note in the fireplace, still smoldering. Most of it was burned away, but we could make out a few words. Wasn't supposed to go this far. I tried to stop him. Forgive me. Kyle stared at the ashes. She's scared, he said. Or she's gone, I replied. That night, I stood on the back porch with a glass of bourbon and stared into the dark field. A month ago, I thought my wife was just cheating. Then I thought she was just lying. Now I wasn't sure what she was anymore. A traitor? A victim? A ghost? All I knew for sure was that someone out there still had unfinished business. And they were looking in my direction. It rained the next morning. Not the soft kind, the hard, hammering kind that hits your roof like it's trying to shake loose your bones. I watched it from the front porch with Rip sleeping at my feet and a Mossberg pump action across my lap. Kyle had installed a new security system the day before, cameras, motion sensors, even glass break detectors on the windows. Not because we were paranoid. Because we weren't stupid. Pruitt was out there. And Melissa, well, she was a question mark wrapped in gunpowder. Kyle pulled up just after noon. He stepped out of the cruiser with a laptop in hand, rain sliding down his jacket. You need to see this, he said, walking straight into the house like a man with a clock ticking in his ear. We sat at the kitchen table. He opened up a map. Satellite imagery. Red pins clustered near the county line. This is where her burner phone last pinged. And I asked. He zoomed in. There's an abandoned farmhouse 2 miles from the state border. Old property records listed as owned by a front company tied to Pruitt's shell operation in Illinois. Could be coincidence. Kyle looked at me. Hard? Could be. But it wasn't. We both knew that. We drove out there the next morning before sunrise. Kyle, me, and Deputy Harris. All armed. All quiet. The old farmhouse looked like every horror movie setup ever made. Tilted porch, broken windows, the faint smell of wet hay and rot. No lights. No vehicles. But as we got closer, the motion sensor Kyle planted 2 days earlier tripped his phone. There had been movement inside the house. Last night, 2:47 a.m. We split up. Kyle went around back. Harris stayed with the vehicles. I crept up the porch with my pistol drawn and heart thudding like a war drum. The front door wasn't locked, just stuck. I nudged it open with my boot and stepped inside. The house was quiet. Too quiet. In the living room, a cot had been set up. Blankets. Half-eaten food. Empty water jugs. Someone had been here. Maybe still was. Then I heard it. A muffled thump from upstairs. I aimed upward, each step on the creaking stairs louder than the last. At the top, there was only one closed door. The bedroom. I pushed it open fast. Gun raised. Melissa was inside. Alone. Huddled in the corner. Eyes red. Shaking. Alive. Her face twisted the moment she saw me, not with fear, not with anger, but something worse. Guilt. You shouldn't have come, she whispered. I stepped closer. Where is he? She shook her head. He's gone. He left last night. Said the storm made it too risky. What did he want? She swallowed. He wanted me to disappear. With him. Did you? I almost did. Kyle burst in a second later, gun up. He lowered it the moment he saw her. Christ, he muttered. You're alive. Barely, she whispered. Back at the station, we took her statement. Or what she was willing to give. She admitted to everything. The embezzlement, the fake donations, the laundering. But she claimed she never knew Pruitt's full plan until it was too late. He used me, she said. Then when I pushed back, he threatened to use you. She looked at me when she said it. I thought if I went with him, he'd leave you alone. I didn't say anything, because I didn't know what was real anymore. The next night, we put her in protective custody, but I didn't sleep. I watched the fields from my porch. Every light flicker, every shadow that moved. And then around 2 a.m., it happened. The power went out. Every light in the house died in an instant. Rip shot up barking. And out in the dark? A pair of headlights. Coming fast. I grabbed the Mossberg. Kyle was already pulling into the driveway, sirens off, gun drawn, yelling at me to stay inside. But I didn't. I wasn't going to hide in my own damn home. The black SUV skidded to a stop 30 yards out. The driver door opened. A man stepped out. Ball cap. Sunglasses. Black coat. Michael Pruitt. Kyle shouted commands. Pruitt didn't flinch. He pulled something from his coat. I raised the shotgun. Kyle screamed. And then, a single shot. Not from me. Not from Kyle. From the trees. A sniper round hit Pruitt square in the back of the skull. He dropped like a rag doll. Dead before he hit the ground. We hit the dirt instantly, guns up, eyes scanning the trees. But no second shot came. No movement. No sound. Just the smell of rain on blood. By dawn, federal agents arrived. They said the shot came from a long-range rifle stationed a half-mile out. Professional. Clean. Disappeared without a trace. Melissa was moved again. This time, no one told me where. Later that week, I got a letter in the mailbox. No return address. Just a note. You're clear now. Let it stay that way. Melissa's gone. Don't know if she's in witness protection or hiding somewhere under another name again. The feds say it's best I don't know. I'm inclined to agree. The house is quieter now. Too quiet, sometimes. But honest. And I'll take quiet honesty over noisy lies any day. Weeks passed. No gunshots. No strangers in dark cars. No cryptic messages. The threat was gone. But the silence it left behind? That was something else entirely. I kept the porch light on every night for a month. Not because I expected Melissa to return. Because part of me wanted to believe she might. To face me. To finish the story. Kyle stopped by every few days. Always in uniform. Always trying to act casual. Like he wasn't watching for signs that I was coming apart. You holding up? He'd ask. I'd nod, lie through my teeth, and say, better every day. But grief's a funny thing. It doesn't just come when people die. Sometimes, it shows up when the person you love turns into someone you never really knew. One morning, I went out to the shed to clean up the mess I'd been avoiding, the stack of boxes from the motel, the old photos, the burner phone backup drive. I told myself it was time to let it go. Start fresh. I opened the last box and found something strange. A padded manila envelope. No address. No stamps. Just my name, written in Melissa's looping cursive. I sat down at the workbench, heart racing like it was gala night all over again. Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter. Not typed, not an email. A real letter. The kind people used to write when they meant every word. Tom, if you're reading this, I'm either gone for good, or you're still looking for answers. So here's the truth. No riddles, no performances. Just me. One last time. I paused. My hands were trembling. I never planned to become the person I became. But that's the problem, isn't it? No one plans to ruin their life. It happens one compromise at a time. I didn't cheat because I stopped loving you. I cheated because I stopped loving myself. That doesn't make it right. Doesn't excuse anything. But it's the truth. Brandon wasn't the first. Michael wasn't the last. There were others. Some you'll find. Some you won't. I was reckless. And selfish. And scared. But the worst thing I ever did wasn't the cheating. It was letting you believe you weren't enough. You were. You always were. I stopped there, swallowing the lump in my throat. The part of me that wanted to rage, to tear the letter in half, that part was quiet now. Not because she deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. I kept reading. Michael offered me something I thought I needed: control. But he never let go. And when I tried to walk, he threatened to burn everything down. I stayed because I thought it would protect you. I slept with him to buy time. And I hated myself more with every minute. When Laura exposed us, part of me felt relief. I knew I was about to lose everything. But at least the lie would finally end. I hope you don't remember me only as the worst thing I've ever done. I hope, somewhere in you, there's a version of me worth remembering. Not for your sake. For mine. You deserve better than I ever gave. And I hope, with every piece of me, that you find it. Live, Tom. Don't spend the rest of your life trying to understand why I broke. Just build something better from the pieces. Love. Once and always in some broken way. Melissa. I folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope. Then I walked outside to the fire pit and lit a match. I didn't burn the letter. I burned everything else. The photos. The files. The burner phone. The GPS logs. All of it. Gone. The smoke lifted into the sky like a final confession. That night, I sat on the porch with Rip by my feet and a cold drink in my hand. The fields were quiet. The wind didn't carry her name anymore. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting. The days got longer again. Spring rolled into summer, and with it came the rhythm I hadn't felt in years. Coffee at dawn. Chores before noon. Quiet afternoons on the porch, watching the soybeans sway like they were breathing. The world kept turning, even when mine had come off its hinges. Funny how it does that. Call called less. I didn't mind. He'd done enough for one lifetime. He had his own family to protect now. His own peace to keep. But he still stopped by every couple weeks to check the locks, share a beer, and pretend we weren't both thinking about the same woman every time her name drifted into silence. One morning, I took Rip down to the old fishing dock on Miller's Pond. Used to be Melissa's favorite spot. Now it was just mine. I cast a line, let the breeze take the weight out of my bones, and thought about the letter again. Not the words. Just the feeling. The rawness. The regret. There was truth in it, even if it came too late. But here's the thing I'd learned. Sometimes, closure doesn't come with justice or answers. Sometimes, it just comes with stillness. The town slowly forgot. Melissa's name came up less and less. The nonprofit replaced her. Brandon sold his house and moved 2 counties over. Rumor had it he'd tried to contact Laura once, but she shut that door so hard it practically left a crater. Good for her. I started doing repairs on the lake house. Nothing fancy. Just paint. Roof patching. A new screen door. Not to honor the past. To reclaim it. That place had been ours once. Full of good memories before it got twisted into something bitter. I wanted to wash the rot out of the wood. And maybe out of myself, too. That's where I met her. The new librarian in town. Her name was Claire. Early 50s. Witty. A voice like jazz and thunder. She stopped by the lake one morning, thinking it was public land. When she saw me, she apologized. I told her not to. We ended up talking for 2 hours. Nothing deep. Just fishing, books, bad coffee. But there was a kindness in her I hadn't seen in a long time. No games. No glances over her shoulder. Just presence. She didn't know my story at first. Eventually, she found out. Everyone does in a town like ours. But she didn't flinch. Didn't ask for the whole tale. She just said, "I'm sorry you had to live through that. But you seem like the kind of man who didn't let it define him." I wanted to laugh. But instead, I just said, "Working on it." By summer's end, we'd shared a few dinners. A couple fishing trips. A late-night drive with the windows down and old country songs on the radio. I didn't rush anything. Didn't expect anything. But damn, it felt good to laugh again. Really laugh. One evening, I stood on the porch as the sun dipped below the hills, Claire sitting beside me with her bare feet up on the railing. She looked over and asked, "If you could go back, would you change any of it?" I didn't answer right away. I thought about Melissa, the affairs, the lies, the danger, the letter. Then I said, I wouldn't change what I did. She raised an eyebrow. But the rest? I looked at her and said, no. Because if I changed the past, I might have missed the chance to meet you. She smiled at that. Didn't say a word. Just reached over and took my hand. The war was over. The fields were green again. And the man who had once been broken? He was finally learning how to live.